live feed to YouTube is probably started. So all our conversations are now public.
Millions of Americans.
Dozens of Americans.
You need to tear it down.
Text this number, please.
Well, there was a truck.
Down there plugging away on my budget book.
I'm pretty sure.
Economic development stuff.
Yeah, that's the
I
mayor.
didn't get any-
I went by there the other day.
What was this one? Goose?
There was a, I don't want to say
Yeah,
a name, but the
that
house
way.
on West End.
I'm taking football down to,
Yeah.
where am I going? Salina.
John, I'm joking. I was kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, West End.
Eric's crazy about our yard, but you can put one in.
I was.
He may move it around some.
When you're a tree crone that lived in that complex.
That's really bad. Is that part of the land?
He didn't like the oil and gas flag in our yard. The county put it.
I went by.
We had one in our yard.
Somehow.
Flag it.
Yeah.
The gas
Why
flag
didn't flag
bothered
here?
him?
Oh, yeah.
Tree crone.
Yeah.
Flags.
Yeah, he's having a fit about it. When are they gonna pick them up? Why don't you know when they're coming to pick them up? They go, I don't work for Ohio Gas, I work for the city.
You're finance.
I have some colorful flags if you're interested in causing some
The leaves change color.
pink, yellow, green.
Light 'em up.
Orange light for the ball.
Just let me know.
Put a sign out. in
Okay,
the
then.
yard and
I
We
will.
only have a Thanksgiving.
I could. Who did that? Somebody did that at one time.
Do what?
Christmas lights on their sign.
Oh, jeez.
Start sign in my yard, put a sign up.
But I'm gonna go
Even
solar,
asked, didn't
so
know
I don't have to use a plug.
That baby came right out of my yard.
Hey, we're gonna go on
We're not on the air now. We'll talk.
I don't do anything political.
Yeah,
Put it in my
I
yard.
was just thinking about that.
But you know, when you go to put signs in your yard, make sure you call the gas
Did
company
you-
in
what
case
was
get
it?
a line.
No, we don't ever,
It's like,
even prior to working here.
Take your chances.
Take your chance.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's not a-
You got a big
Eric didn't
yard.
even like a
Yard
Remax
roulette.
for sale sign in our yard with his mom's picture on it. That bothered him.
oh, crap. Either they're on the board or the volunteers.
Excuse me.
Okay.
No.
I didn't know if they meant.
Be getting underway in about 10 seconds.
Eggs are dumped in all
Nine.
over. I don't know who they want to.
Five,
We can get.
4, 3.
It don't matter, I was
Yeah,
just
that's what
curious.
it is.
Okay.
Lost control.
Maybe start. Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for tonight, October 10th, 2023. Before we get underway, we have Pastor Ben Polson here of Poplar Ridge Church to open us up in prayer. Thanks for being our guest this evening.
Thanks for having me. Would you pray with me? Oh Lord, you are God and there is no other. We're thankful for this country we live in, Lord, where we are free to gather, to discuss business, to seek the good of the city, to seek your guidance. Thank you for these men and women, Lord, who give up their time selflessly to for the betterment of the city, to look out for their neighbors. Pray that you would give them wisdom and guidance, that we would all seek your face, seek your glory. Give them wisdom and direction, Lord, and please bless them and their families as they do this work. Through Christ we pray. Amen.
Thank you. This meeting is called to order. Let the record show that all the members of council are present except for Mr. Uresti. He contacted me earlier that he wouldn't be able to make it this evening. Do we have a motion to excuse him?
So moved.
So moved, Mr. Mass. Second, Mr. Engel. All those in favor of excusing Mr. Uresti from tonight's council meeting say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, he is excused this evening. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I've reviewed the index minutes for the city council meeting of October 3rd. Do we have a motion to correct or amend them as they're presented? If we don't, then I will endorse them. Do we have any liaison meeting reports or requests?
Somebody needs to announce a meeting October 24th, the committee of the whole for the 2023 capital budget priorities from 5 to 7. Correct? That's what you have on our sheet,
That's fine, we can.
from 5 to 7, October 24th.
So we have,
I'll announce, we have a budget committee of the whole, October
24th.
24th, from 5 to 7 PM here in the council chambers, 631 Perry Street.
Which one?
It's the 2023 capital project,
Be the 2024.
or 2024
Yeah.
capital project priorities.
The sheet you gave me, I put in my calendar that would be water and sewer.
Okay.
It was a joint. It's
I
the
have
20
both. Water, I didn't bring my sheet with me. Do you have it there?
No, I have it on my desk. You want me to grab it? Because it does say joint, sewer,
Sewer,
water, finance.
And capital.
And we're just talking about the capital project
For those
priorities.
items.
Okay,
Okay.
for water and sewer. In that,
For capital, for
request.
their capital,
Yes.
water and sewer.
we could include water and sewer, that would be good.
Let's include water and sewer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry,
No, thanks.
5
This
to
is my first
7.
go, so.
Yeah, okay.
5 to 7, October 24th, 631 Perry Street.
Yep.
excellent. That went smoothly.
Thank you.
Well done, thanks. And any other liaison meeting requests or reports? We'll be there that evening. Do we have any comments from council? No comments from council. All right, on to the Board of Control. Mr. Mack.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Okay, okay,
We
so,
choreographed this.
okay, fair enough. Throwing me off.
Threw you off.
Yeah, so first off, I would ask tonight for council to have an executive session for collective bargaining matters, 121.22, and you can correct me, I think G4 is my understanding, an executive session. That's
So-
it, G4.
So we have a request for an executive session this evening.
So moved.
So moved, Mr. Corbett.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mr. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Wexler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Crutch. Yes.
Right, then before we adjourn for this evening, we'll have an executive session.
Thank you, Mr. President. Secondly, I would just wanted to make council aware that our fall fire hydrant flushing will be starting on Sunday. So just wanted to make council aware. And that is all at this time.
Thank you. Mayor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I wanted my executive session to follow Mr. Max, which is why I asked President McMaster to have you go first. And so I would request an executive session to discuss the hiring of a public official.
So we have a request for an executive session for the hiring of a public official. Mr. Engel?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hancock?
Can I have the number, Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes, that is the G1.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Wexler,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch. Yes. Mr. Engel,
Yes.
and Mr. Corbett.
Yes.
Then we'll have a second before we adjourn for the evening. Anything else?
That's all, sir. Thank you.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes, Mr. President. I know in the past, some of you have asked about the property next door at 621 Perry Street. Used to be an auto repair shop, and before that, an auto body and painting shop. And happy to report that through her diligence, the Defiance County Treasurer has procured a Phase 1 environmental site assessment on behalf of the Defiance County Land Reutilization Corporation, commonly referred to as the Land Bank. The property is about 1/3 of an acre and contains a 15,000 square foot building that was actually, the auto repair / auto body shop from around 1946 to 2017. And then it stopped operating as such. And so therefore, it probably would not surprise you that the assessment found that there were some hazardous substances and petroleum products used on the subject property. And the study observed some of those products on the property. So that includes antifreeze, paint solvent that are being removed from the property. And that really makes sense for that kind of use. It's an auto repair shop and it's not unexpected. And a lot of the materials just sitting in the containers, according to how the report read. So it's gonna be a pretty easy cleanup, move the containers. So that's good news. And then once the Land Reutilization Corporation is able to do that, abate the environmental conditions, or cause that to be done, demolish the structure on the property and produce a no further action letter, we will present an ordinance to you to gauge your appetite on acquiring that property for further city or further development purposes.
All right, do we have any questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Mr. Hancock?
So it will be raised, it will be seeded at the point where the city is going to, or offer it to the city, is that correct?
Yeah, there's a kind of an informal handshake agreement between the Defiance County Land Reutilization Corporation and the city that we would purchase that property if the land bank were to go ahead and acquire it. We didn't want to purchase it directly because of the environmental concerns that they are currently investigating, but they have been a helpful partner to us.
So who will be doing the demo?
It would be the Land Reutilization Corporation.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Wexler?
Is that gonna be for the 31,000 original price we was talking or no?
Yeah, it's in that ballpark. It was 30 plus a little bit for closing costs, attorney's fees, and some of those incidental expenses to the acquisition.
All right, thank you.
And that's all I have.
Oh, well, thank you.
I just add, it was interesting, reading the executive summary as part of that 911 page document. That was at one time a carriage manufacturing facility. It also made mittens, as a mitten manufacturer at some point. And there were a few other things, but those were two that I thought was intriguing. At that site, maybe not, well, yeah, in that building, yep, fascinating. Mittens.
Remember when Darrell's way drove the cars up the ramp?
Oh, yes, yep, not with me in it.
And Ms. Sprague?
Yes, I have two purchase orders. Purchase order 2023-01535. It's the UBO refunds, forfeited deposits in the amount of $33,495. And purchase order 2023-01516 for streets, the Morton Salt, 25,000 even. And that's all I have at this time.
Well, thank you. We do have 4 items of legislation for discussion this evening. Would you read the caption of the first?
First reading by caption only, an ordinance directing the city administrator to submit a revolving loan fund waiver request for the construction of the Bicentennial Alley off of West 2nd Street and declare an emergency.
Mr. Mack?
Thank you, Mr. President. So as council will remember, last budget season, we discussed fixing up the alley off of 2nd Street that heads toward the State Bank drive-through. The goal was to fix it up to match many of the very nice ones that we've done along Clinton Street, and we would be looking at calling that the Bicentennial Alley to match the other ones that have been redone that have names from our past. So council agreed to this project, originally budgeted $105,000. As with everything else this year, the price went up significantly once we actually really started looking into getting the cost done. Because of this and because of the cost of some of the other projects this year, we had looked at maybe we'd have to do it, put it in the budget next year. We'd have to make some considerations what we wanted to do with it. But I'll tell you, through the diligence of our city planner and our city engineer, trying to game plan and come up with how do we get this done this year? How do we get the ball rolling on it this year? They came up with the idea to use money from the revolving loan fund. We have, I want to say,
900,000.
yeah, but we have little over 900,000 total, but we have about 515 that is not committed to any projects. We have to spend that down by next year anyways, because it's the CDBG project year, and the state wants to see that number be a little bit lower than it is before they will give us more grant money to do things in the city of Defiance. So they came up with this idea that we should use the RLF in the amount, or right around 175,000, which is what that price had ballooned up to get that alley done, along with some minor drainage that needs done through that area as well. So by approving this tonight, council would allow this project to move forward and get back on the right track, and would allow us to put that waiver into the state of Ohio to use those funds rather than our capital funds to be able to take care of this project.
To do the alley next year.
Correct.
Thank you. Do we have questions for Mr. Mack in these regards? Mr. Mast?
That alley, were there some issues with the brick on one of those buildings as well?
It was further down on the alley. What would it be towards the? Not the area that we were. Well, you had talked about the one.
So
there's one that has a lot of issues that's being worked on currently.
Further,
Yes, further down, but there may have been some brick issues.
Have those been addressed?
Yes. Yep, so there's two brick issues. One in the first section of the north-south alley where it terminates at the east-west alley that runs alongside Meeks. So yes, that's been addressed, and the alley then south of that, the north-south alley running south of that is being addressed right now.
With the help of the facade program,
Yes,
actually.
that's correct. Yep.
Mrs. Crutch?
So in this alley, the metal work, that will be included in the 175,000, that'll say Bicentennial Alley?
The goal is to name it the Bicentennial Alley. That's why we've done the decorating throughout some of the bicentennial events.
Right, I just didn't know if it was the wrought iron piece, you know, like Slocum and Brickell.
It will match the school.
Yes, it'll match
Is
the
that
rest
your
of
question,
them.
Mrs. Crutch?
And then in the alley, I know that he said there was drainage problems right in the middle, but there was also towards the end. Is that going to be taken care of too?
So the alley, the north-south alley will be done to the east-west alley, and then the east-west alley will be extended from where it stops and extended to the east. There's a catch basin there. The issue with drainage in that alley, if you look into that catch basin, it's very shallow.
Very shallow.
Okay.
So Melinda's working on some creative engineering to make the whole thing work.
Now, I know that a lot of people had issues with parking back there because of
Yep.
so much water. Okay, awesome.
They're gonna bring the east-west alley and match up to the north-south?
Yes.
Yes. It'll make a very nice little walkthrough on that corner.
Mrs. Crutch?
No further questions, motion to suspend the call.
We have a motion to suspend and call.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast?
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
And Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Corbett? Second, Mr. Engel?
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing and ratifying an additional compensation to retired employees who have rehired into their prior positions.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to premise this ordinance in that it is limited to 3 current employees who have already, for all intents and purposes, retired and rehired as city employees. It's not prospective. And I believe I outlined that in section 6 of the ordinance. But Ohio Revised Code, section 9.44C, does not permit an employee who retires under the provisions of a state pension plan to rehire and have his prior service counted for the purposes of computing his vacation time, his vacation time accrued going forward. That rehire has to start over at the new higher rate for the amount and the accrual of vacation. That's Ohio Revised Code. Furthermore, section 147.11B of our codified ordinance here at the city allows for an employee who retires to be paid in cash for 1/2 the value of his unused sick leave accrued to his credit while in the service of the city to a maximum calculation or maximum accumulation of 960 hours. So basically, you get 1/2 the value of your unused sick leave up to that amount. You can't go greater than that. If the employee wants to rehire after his retirement, then he starts over on the sick leave as if he were a new employee, just like the vacation time. That is the default standard. That's the legal standard, and it doesn't change unless you decide that it should for a particular employee or class of employees. So Article 2, Section 12, Clause 4 of our charter authorizes you, though, as council, to go above and beyond that standard if you find that there's a compelling reason to do so. As council, you have the authority to fix the number of employees in the city and to fix the rate of their compensation, right? So earlier this year, Mr. Mack and I and Ms. Sprague and Ms. Lambert, we consulted with our outside counsel for labor issues, labor negotiations, and we learned that our common practices that we've used as far back as any of us can remember did not comply with these provisions. They were too generous. And that's, I partly blame myself because while I wasn't involved in these decisions, I kind of heard about them going on and probably should have paid more attention. So what we had were employees retiring one day and then rehiring the next day as if nothing had changed in their vacation and sick leave accrual rates or with the time that they had earned. They just kept going. And again, that's compensation that's the definition of compensation that had not been allotted to them. But so I want to note this ordinance only covers 3 of the non-bargaining employees that were kind of left in the lurch here. We're trying not to pull the rug out from under them because they made decisions for themselves and their family based on what their understanding was at the time and what was promised to them at the time. The city intends to change its practices going forward to comply with these existing standards. And we've, in fact, developed a new employee policy I believe we've brought to your attention that states that we will do so. We're going to comply with the Ohio Revised Code and municipal ordinances, but we do need to clean up the arrangements that were made for prior employees and also for audit purposes. And to the extent that we need council authorization to that extent, we need your authorization to allow these employees to continue with that arrangement. So it basically cleans up the past employees, puts in place a new correct policy, and any employees who wish to retire, rehire from now on will have to abide by this. And just want to reiterate to you, there's not going to be any exceptions unless we find something, identify an employee who we think really needs a different paradigm, and only if we bring it to your attention and you approve it by ordinance. So again, it's just kind of a cleanup piece of legislation that we're asking you to consider tonight.
Mr. Waxler,
No further question, no suspend and call.
we have no further questions. Motion to suspend and call Mr. Waxler. Second, Mr. Corbett.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Motion adopted.
Motion to adopt Mr. Waxler. Second, Mr. Engel.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is also adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance amending section 921.03 of the codified ordinances establishing the rates to be charged for water furnished by the city from and after January 1st, 2024, and declare an emergency.
Ms. Sprague.
As you recall, at the last meeting, we had a study session where I presented the rates to be set for January 1 of 24, 25, 26, and 27. This is the water side of that ordinance, asking for your approval.
Mr. Hancock.
And the reason for the emergency.
Do you normally do emergency or?
The reason for, we'd like to get this on the books so the ratepayers know what's coming down the pike. We can notify the users that are outside the city what the rates will be for 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, we've got pending contracts with some of our satellite customers that it's gonna depend on, you know, when this takes effect.
Discount. Mr. West.
No further questions. Motion to suspend the call.
I believe we may have citizens' questions.
Yes,
All right, would you come up to the mic, state your name and your address?
my name is Vicky Schott, and my address is 1010 Harding Street. And I just want to know what constitutes a rate hike. I mean, the water that we have now, I won't even give to my dogs. Is the water still coming out of the or the river?
The basic process for processing our water, ma'am, is to normally pump it out of the Maumee River into the reservoir. It settles there for a time, then it's pumped back to the water plant and treated accordingly. There are times where we do pump directly from the river, treat, but those times are rare. After that, it's treated through the normal system. What we have added within the last year is the GAC system, the granular activated carbon system. And I feel, and many others feel, that it has dramatically improved the quality of our water on both taste and odor. Now, I believe you mentioned Harding Street. We will, in the morning, reach out to our water distribution folks, and maybe when we're not on camera, you could give me your telephone number, and we will contact you to see if there's maybe some extenuating circumstances where you live on Harding that we need to look into.
So what was the purpose of getting a reservoir then? Because, I mean, I'm originally from Van Wert, and those reservoirs over there are filled strictly by rainwater.
Rainwater would never keep up with the volume of water that we use.
Well, there's no rivers over there, so I don't know where else they would get them from.
I
But
believe they do.
I
pump-
could be wrong.
Yeah,
I mean-
I do believe they pump out of a ditch, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
I think they have wells done in Van
I've
Wert.
had one conversation with Van Wert in my
Okay.
time as mayor. In all honesty, the reservoir was constructed before any of us were here. The general purpose was to allow for some storage capacity for water in emergency uses. We can't always count on the Maumee River water being of high enough quality that allows us to treat it in a reasonable fashion. And it's probably before your time, but years and years ago, upstream, there was a fire at a grain elevator and some chemicals were released into the Maumee River, and we couldn't pump water and we couldn't produce water for several days while those chemicals went by our intake. But it's also a safety concern.
Okay. Well, I'd appreciate if someone could come and check it out because my water tastes like pure chlorine.
I don't notice that, and but I'll come over and talk to you in just a
I
minute.
must have a good nose. I don't know. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right, with that, we have a standing motion to suspend and call. Mr. Mast? Second, Mr. Engel?
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
And Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Engel. Second, Mr. Mast?
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
And Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance amending subsections E and F of the codified ordinance 925.10, establishing the rates to be charged for sewer services furnished by the city from and after January 1st, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Sprague.
Same as the water, we have sewer. And I had mentioned last meeting, those will be implemented January 1 of 24, 25, 26, 27.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Sprague? Mr. Corbett?
No further questions, motion to suspend and call.
We have no further questions. We have a motion to suspend and call.
Second.
Second, Mr. Engel?
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Crutch?
Yes. Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Crutch.
Second.
And second, Mr. Mast.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
With that, this final ordinance is adopted. Before we enter executive session, or both executive sessions, we do have a time for citizens' concerns. Are there any citizens' concerns? Could you please state your name and address and?
Sure. Ben Polson, 6938 Domersville Road, Defiance, Ohio. It's not a concern, it's more I just want to bring to council's attention, opportunity for y'all. Poplar Ridge is hosting couples comedy night, marriage workshop, a 2-day, Friday, November 10th, Saturday, November 11th. It's going to be at Family Christian Center, 7 to 10 Friday, 9 to noon on Saturday with Mark Gunger. He's a pastor and marriage expert out of Wisconsin. So it's $35 a person. It's going to be a great time, and come out, bring your families, tell your friends.
So it's an opportunity for a marriage counselor to speak to couples.
Yes.
Right.
And he is funny. You will laugh. You'll have a good time.
I have a concern.
Sure.
Philip Schott, 1010 Harding Street, Defiance. This town adopted me 36 years ago, and I greatly appreciate West High Street getting repaved. I think your speed limit signs are a joke. I'm sorry, it's now a drag strip. I could like to see a lot more police presence down there. There's plenty of places to hide. Clear out, even at Olson's Commercial Cold Storage. Where's 35?
I live out there, sir.
Now wait a minute, we have no sidewalks, and I live just 4 blocks from ProMedica. It's supposedly a prestige neighborhood. I see nothing. We have kids riding bicycles. We have adults walking. We have adults even riding bicycles. And it's a dangerous area all the way out to 24. And I'd like to see some police presence at some time. I mean, 3 o'clock to 6, I think you'd make a big difference.
Thank you.
Three.
I agree.
3 to 6 p.m., sir.
Yeah.
If there are no further citizens'
She
concerns,
speaks for me.
then we'll stretch our legs for a few minutes before we enter executive session.
November 10th and
Pastor
11th.
Ben, you better hand him that marriage thing there.
Yes, dear.